Imagine this. You are 300 feet beneath the surface, enclosed in a steel tube with 90 men. The air is thick with diesel fumes, sweat, and the smell of cooking food. Every groan of the hull reminds you that only inches of steel separate you from a watery grave. This was the harsh reality for World War II submariners, silent, suffocating, and always a heartbeat away from disaster. In June 1944, one such submarine would rise from this hidden world and collide with the largest carrier battle in history. This is the untold story of how a rookie submarine on its first patrol played a pivotal role in shaping the fate of the Pacific War. The battle for the Philippines had begun, and the Japanese were determined to stop the American invasion of Saipan. Vice Admiral Jizaburo Ozawa led the charge aboard the massive aircraft carrier times Taiho *, but beneath the waves, an untested American submarine, the Times USS Kavala *, was about to make history. In the vast, unpredictable ocean, fate had already placed her at the center of the Pacific's deadliest confrontation. The Imperial Japanese Navy, once the mightiest force in the Pacific, was now on the offensive in a desperate attempt to protect its dwindling empire. Under Admiral Ozawa's command, a formidable fleet of carriers, battleships, and destroyers set sail to confront the U.S. Navy. Their target was Saipan, a critical island in the Mariana Islands, which, if lost, would bring American bombers within striking distance of Japan's home islands. The American response came under the leadership of Admiral Raymond Spruance. Known for his cool-headed decision-making, Spruance assembled the largest and most powerful fleet ever to sail into battle. The Times Fifth Fleet *, carrying 15 carriers, 7 modern battleships, and hundreds of aircraft, was poised for a critical strike. Operation Forager was about to unfold, aimed at securing Saipan as a stepping stone for the eventual invasion of Japan itself. Meanwhile, beneath the surface, Commander Herman Clare and his crew aboard the Times USS Kavala embarked on their very first war patrol. As the Times Kavala silently slipped away from Pearl Harbor on the 4th of June, none of her crew could have known that they were about to play an unthinkable role in the fate of the Pacific War. They were just one small piece in a massive naval chess game, yet, by the end of the day, they would change history. The battle raged above, with both fleets preparing to engage in what would become the largest carrier battle in history. Ozawa's plan, Operation Ago *, was simple: strike first, overwhelm the American fleet with sheer numbers, and cripple their ability to invade Saipan. But his plan had 2 fatal flaws: inexperienced pilots and unstable fuel. The once invincible Japanese airmen had been decimated in previous battles, leaving behind a group of untested young pilots. Worse still, Japan's fuel supplies were so stretched that they were forced to use Times Tawitomi crude *, a dangerous and unstable oil, which made their ships and planes prone to breakdowns and explosions. As both fleets neared the Philippines, tension built to a fever pitch. The Times USS Kavala *, having received orders to patrol a designated sector, slowly crept forward in the vast Pacific. A mix of seasoned veterans and nervous rookies, the crew prepared for their first real taste of combat. The submarine's mission was simple: report any enemy movements and await orders. What they didn't know was that fate had placed them directly in the path of history. The mighty Times Shokaku *, a veteran carrier that had once launched the attack on Pearl Harbor, was sailing directly into their sights. The crew of the Times Kavala would soon find themselves facing a crucial decision. Should they engage the Japanese fleet head-on, risking everything for a shot at glory, or remain hidden, waiting for the right moment to strike? As the Times USS Kavala silently tracked the Japanese fleet, Commander Clare knew that his crew's survival depended on a single, critical decision. In the distance, he saw the looming silhouette of Times Shokaku *, flanked by her escorts. The moment had arrived. The Times Kavala had a clear shot at history, yet a destroyer, the Times Urikaze *, was dangerously close, patrolling the waters and threatening to expose their position. Clare made a calculated decision. Rather than firing immediately, he chose to shadow the fleet, reporting their movements back to Admiral Spruance. The Times Kavala dived deep into the ocean, avoiding detection. Hours passed in silent tension as the crew listened to the echoing ping of Japanese sonar above. Every minute was a risk, but Claire held his nerve. At last, after several long hours, the Kavala Times surfaced again. The crew was exhausted, but the mission was clear. The Japanese fleet had been located, and the hunt was on. Commander Claire radioed in the first of many reports to Pearl Harbor, signaling the beginning of an operation that would soon have world-changing consequences. The crew had endured the stress of evading depth charges, and now they had to endure the weight of knowing that they had the opportunity to strike at Japan's pride. The moment USS Kavala Times launched its torpedoes at the Shokaku *, the Pacific War shifted. 6 torpedoes were fired, and the crew held their breath as the sea erupted in violent explosions. Shokaku, crippled by the strike, would soon sink beneath the waves, marking a critical blow to the Japanese carrier fleet. The survivors of the attack on Shokaku Times would never know it, but their ship's loss would mark the beginning of the end for Japan's naval dominance. The Battle of the Philippine Sea, known as the Marianas Turkey Shoot *, would go on to be remembered for its overwhelming American victory in the air. But beneath the surface, the silent warriors of the USS Kavala Times had delivered the decisive blow that crippled the heart of Japan's fleet. For Commander Claire and his crew, the battle wasn't over. They had faced relentless depth charges and near-certain death beneath the waves. Yet, their success was not just in sinking a carrier, it was in their ability to remain undetected, to be the unseen hand that delivered the fatal blow. As the Kavala Times surfaced after her daring attack, her crew knew that they had changed the course of history. In the years that followed, the USS Kavala Times would continue to serve in the Pacific, sinking more ships and playing its part in the eventual victory over Japan. But it was the story of that first patrol, the courage, the strategy, and the silent, deadly strike that would forever define its place in history. The legacy of those men endures today, reminding us of the silent sacrifices made by the submariners who helped win the Pacific War. Their story, like the ocean itself, is vast and unspoken, yet no less important in shaping the world we live in today.